everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is Plaguecast for me, finally. I am the last one who managed to avoid COVID, and I'm no longer avoiding it. So I'm just like you. I'm just one of us. Congratulations. You got me. I hope everybody's happy. How are you doing, Nate?
I'm great, man. It's weirdly muggy here. Weather has cooled off a bit. It's finally been raining, but I think we got so accustomed to the idea of it being dry because it hadn't, rained in so long that you forget that like it actually can be kind of humid here. And so, yeah, it's been interesting.
It's kind of like that, when, at least in the Midwest, I know this, like when it snows, everybody suddenly forgets that like it snows sometimes. And it's just like, I have no idea how to drive in the snow. Like it snowed last year, guys. Did you all get head injuries or something? But I assume head injuries are a normal thing in England regardless.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's like that with in Alaska. Everybody forgets how to drive in the snow, and it's like it snows like 7-8 months out of the year here, man.
It's literally Alaska. It's made of snow. Congratulations, you guys have a new leader.
Liz Truss.
Your sixth one in like 10 years. How many prime ministers have you guys had in the last couple years?
So, in 2010, it was Gordon Brown. In 2012, it was David Cameron. So 10 years ago, it was David Cameron. Went Cameron, then Theresa May, then Boris Johnson, and now Liz Truss. If you go in 15 years, it was Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss. So yeah, it's been a lot.
I would ask if you guys are, if these people are Illinois governors, except Illinois puts their governors in jail when they get rid of them. So
yeah, I mean, basically, it's really weird for us because Liz Truss was a running bit on the show because she's an idiot. She's an absolute moron. People who've worked in her department are famous for saying that she will get lost in her own office. She loves running her mouth saying the stupidest shit you can possibly imagine. Her big thing about Brexit was it would open up exciting new pork markets for the UK, which doesn't really make any sense. The UK is not a massive meat producer. I mean, it does produce meat, but it's not like our primary industry. You know what I mean? She said that young people don't need unions because they are like Uber riding, Deliveroo ordering freedom fighters. In one of her speeches, she's an idiot. She tried to do some freelance stuff, talking up the idea of a free trade, or rather a freedom of movement being part of a future post-Brexit free trade deal with Australia. And the Australian government had to clarify. They're like, absolutely not. We will definitely not be allowing a bunch of low-skilled English people moving over here and sapping up our benefits. Like, it's very, very funny. She's a complete moron. But she was absolutely a sort of running bit for us is to talk about Liz Truss as prime minister and how fucking stupid that would be. And she's now prime minister. For those of you who decided that the Conservative Party membership would prefer to vote for someone who's white over someone who's further to the right, mostly because of the fact that they are racist above all else, you were correct. If you were like me and you said there's simply no way that Sajid Javid or Kemi Badenoch or Rishi Sunak is going to be allowed to be prime minister because the Conservative Party its membership would never vote for them. That was correct.
They'd rather have the dumb white lady than the even further right brown guy.
Yes, because like Priti Patel, Kemi Badenoch, they're like extraordinarily far right. Like Suella Braverman, they're all really like insanely culture war far right. Like just full on remember Kayleigh McEnany or whatever the fuck her name was, the spokeswoman for Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, she like some of these Tory politicians, non-white Tory politicians, are like right-wing and stupid to that degree, which is in line with kind of the Tory party's expectations at this moment. But Liz Truss is white, and so they are just like, oh, she'll just be like Baroness Thatcher, and it's like, Thatcher was insane and dumb in her own way, but Thatcher like could read. Like genuinely, Truss is such a fucking idiot. And like, it couldn't be worse timing given the situation that is brewing right now in this country.
And this entire fucking world. Like I know that America is one of the big wigs, but England's still up there, and it's not great that you guys got somebody somehow dumber than Boris in charge. Like Boris seemed like an idiot, but he seemed like an idiot that knew what he was doing. I don't know how best to describe that as I'm a stupid right winger who's going to do stupid right wing things because.
But he was willing to compromise. He's an absolute idiot. He was not smart. He didn't know what he was doing, but he would do whatever he needed to do to make a meeting end and make a decision so people would like him again, so he could get back to doing coke and impregnating women.
Right. But you need a right wing leader needs to be an egomaniac to get anything done. If you just have somebody who's just an idiot but also doesn't really want anybody looking at them, then it's just going to be very strange. I don't know. I look forward to seeing how this is all gonna how this specific way is gonna blow up in everybody's faces. At this point, politics is just a carny sideshow for me. It's the only way that I manage to not scream into my pillow every night. So we'll see how we end up doing with that after Biden. I know that on our side, it seems at least that the Republicans have miscalculated how much people actually don't like abortion, because as much as the no abortions for anybody everywhere at any time, and then suddenly they see the polling numbers that say actually like 80% of people are fine with some kind of abortion, and then that it turns out 80% includes some of your own constituency. So there's been a lot of immediate brake slamming and websites being scrubbed about abortion, and going back to the actually, maybe 15 weeks is a good compromise when, Roe v. Wade was the compromise. So it's, again, everything is terrible and dumb and stupid, but entertaining, I guess. To
give you the summarized version of what's happening, fuel price stuff's just getting out of control in this country. And I think I talked about this in another episode, but we're not beholden to Russian gas. We're just beholden to market prices and the fact that the government refuses to intervene. They basically say that if gas prices are high and BP is making, 10 billion pounds per quarter in profits, that's the natural law of things. And if that means that, every single person who's on the state pension in this country will literally fully go into poverty, paying their electric and gas bills this winter, that's fine. The natural law says BP has to make profits. We produce over half of our own gas in this country. We import a significant amount of the non-domestically produced stuff from Norway. We only get a small amount of LNG, and of that small amount of LNG, only a tiny bit is Russian. So ultimately, it's just the gas prices in Europe and the fact that we don't have any storage. They closed all the storage to be more efficient. I'm not joking. They closed all of it. We have no significant long-term storage in this country, and so it's really stupid. And you're seeing situations. So if you're a resident in a residential home, there's a maximum amount they can charge you every year, and that's what they're going to charge you. And it's gone up like 170% since last year. It's going to keep going up like that every 3 to 6 months. So right now it's this time last year it was like $1,000, £1,000 a year was supposed to be the cap. Now it's gone up to like 4,200, almost 4,300 pounds a year. It's supposed to go up to 7,700 in April. So it's basically jumping sevenfold in the span of like a year and some change. And people just can't afford to pay this. But here's the thing. That's for residential homes. For commercial facilities, it's not capped how much they can charge. So like restaurants, pubs, et cetera, are seeing their bills go, because they typically pay quarterly gas bills and they typically pay in advance based on their previous usage. They're seeing bills going from like, oh, you pay us 2,000 pounds a month to like, you pay us 21,000 pounds a month. So like they can't stay open. Like something like 70% of pubs in this country have said they expect to have to close permanently this winter. Something like 50% of small businesses say they expect to close as well. Like fully economic apocalypse in this country. The pound is as low as I've ever seen it against the dollar. And they're just like, we need to cut taxes. I'm dead serious. They're like, we need to cut taxes.
Hey, if they cut your taxes and you get, an extra 500 pounds a year or so, that should help, offset some of the costs. Let's not talk about inflation.
The BBC puts out shit about like, here's ways you can scrimp on fucking like washing and wash more, wash your clothes quickly, wash your dishes quickly, take shorter showers. You can save 145 pounds a year. It's like fucking great. What am I going to do about the other 6,600 pounds I have to pay? Like, man, fuck out of here. And it's just like, I love my impartial state broadcaster. Like, labor is saying that they're going to oh, we'll give you a VAT rebate. It's like, there's a cap on how much VAT you pay on fucking fuel anyway. So it's like, cool, I'll get 300 pounds back. Great. What about the other 7,400 pounds? Like, basically the top 10% of earnings in this country, if you are in the top 10% of earners, if you make above, I think, £41,000 a year, which is about this, because the exchange rate is so low, that's about $45,000 a year. You're in the top 10% of earners in the UK. And it's estimated, like, people on this in the top 10%, people on 41,000 are going to need help to pay their bills. They will not be able to afford it this winter. Like, you basically have to be in the top, like, 4% of earners in this country to not really be affected by these rising prices. Like, it's insane. It's fucking insane. And they literally just, like, it's all going to kick in on October 1st, and they have no plan. People are already getting their bills. People are already getting told, like, businesses are already shutting down. And they're just like, we'll figure it out. And, like, fucking pork markets, Liz Truss, who, like, if I remember, there was the thing where she was doing this video, like a promo video, and she was trying to seem like important business person, like important politician person. And, like, she was very clearly holding a phone in the photo that wasn't connected by a cable. Like, the handset wasn't connected to the fucking set. Like, great. I'm thrilled. I'm excited. We'll do fine.
How's Trash Future going to weather this one?
Honestly, we lucked out really hardcore because the place where we have this long-term studio lease, it's only electric, it's no gas. And when we got a commercial electric deal, I went through the sort of place where you shop against offers, and I got us locked in on a tariff from EDF that is locked at that tariff. It doesn't go up or down in July 2021. And it's so before any of the shocks happened. In a pinch, if we can't afford to heat our home, which uses gas heat and is very drafty, because country of landlords, they have no incentive to fix things, and you pay the landlords typically would never pay your utility bills. You have to pay them yourself, and they don't pay property tax either. So our landlord has not done any work to insulate the house, so it's insanely drafty in the wintertime. The good news is the studio can be kept warm, and it won't break the bank for us for the rent. However,
everybody's just going to pile into the studio and sleep on one bed, like it's
we're
some
gonna
sort of like
we're going to sleep in
orphanage.
We're going to sleep in a great big shoe. Yeah, we always talked about how this was a thing that we do as the podcast, and so it's going to happen for real. But what was I going to say? The biggest thing for us, I think, is just the fact that, like, the reason why we're able to do this and have the show and have the studio and stuff is because of people deciding they want to spend money on a podcast. And when people say, "Well, I don't think I can afford that given the situation," like, I understand. I genuinely, granted, like, I'm such a stingy bastard that I forget that for many people, like, the idea of subscribing to a podcast where you get, in our case, we put out like 6 bonus episodes a month, for the price of like a cup of coffee. That's a good deal. Whereas for me, I'm like, it's a lot of money for a podcast. Like, I'm like, I make my living off of this, but I'm really bad at it. Like, what I do is I just make myself subscribe.
We pay for a lot of podcasts that I do not listen to.
Yeah, I don't listen to them either. That's the thing. I don't have time, and I love, like, if there's an episode that interests me, I'll definitely listen to it. But I just subscribe to shows and just leave the subscription on forever and just pay it. And the way I do it is I have it set up so that the way that I get paid for shows that get Patreon payouts in dollars, I just have it deduct from that balance. So every month, like, I don't even notice the difference that the money's going out. I just it settles the tab in advance before I get paid, and then that way I pay all the shows that I subscribe to and never listen to. Like, I don't even feel bad because, like, that's just some people are podcast freaks. They love it. And I really respect those people because they're the reason why I can do this for a living. But
hey, once upon a time, I used to have to drive to work, and then I would drive to school, and then I would drive home, and I was in a car for like 2.5 hours every day for 5 days a week. And I listened to a shitload of podcasts, and now I work from home. And I'll listen to if I go running or if I go to the gym, I usually just put on music because I don't want to have to pay attention to something. I just want something to, like, drown out everything else. So, but I will sometimes, like, I'll listen to Lions Led by Donkeys. It's really the only podcast that I kind of, dip into. And I don't listen to the bonus stuff because I'm on most of it.
Yeah,
so,
I listen to Lions Led by Donkeys and Trash Future and What a Hell of a Way to Die and Kill James Bond because I am the producer of those shows, so I have to listen to every episode.
You already listen to podcasts for a job, so listen to them for fun.
Even before I became a podcast producer, I would typically, if I wanted to fill time on things, I would listen to music. I used to commute about an hour-ish, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, depending on how bad the trains were every day. So in summer times, we'd sometimes be allowed to work from home on Fridays, but that was because all the big important business people, like, had homes in the fucking Hamptons and they just, like, weren't working in the office. But normally it would be 5 days a week, have to be at my desk I mean, if it was up to my boss's second in command, I would have had to be at my desk at 7:30 every morning. But really, I had to be at my desk like between 9 and 10, depending on what was going on. And I typically would stay at work till 6 regardless. And sometimes I'd stay a little later because I'd want to either go to the gym or like take the train to a gym near our home that was less annoying than the ones in Midtown. And I was spending 10 hours a week on the subway, and I just listened to music. I mean, like when Trash Future asked me to be a guest on the show, and I wanted to listen to the show to see what it was like, I remember listening to it and like enjoying it, but also like it made me laugh a lot, and it made me laugh enough that like people were looking at me on the train, and like that's just one of those things where I was like, no, I'm prone to laughing so hard. I genuinely can't listen to podcasts while commuting. I'm just too weird of a guy. I can't hold it in, I suppose. Can't be stony faced the way you have to be as a New Yorker.
My wife is like that, and she also has a very distinctive laugh too. So I will hear her laughing just like reading articles on her phone. And you know, it's just some people. I don't laugh out loud doing stuff like that. I will find things funny, but just so for those of you who are not members of the Patreon, keep in mind, you don't have to listen to the stuff.
You just give us money. Yeah. Well,
just because you support us, like you give us $1 or $3 or $5 or 10, you know, either one. All those are perfectly acceptable. But also, if you just want to leave a review, that's cool.
Yeah. Too. So I mean, Cynthia doesn't have I mean, she has like her like laughing at like chuckling at stuff on the internet laugh, and then like actually laughing laugh. So sometimes if like I'm walking past like, you know, where she's sitting or something, and I hear the kind of internet chuckle, like I know that she's online. And she's seen something that made her laugh, but not like fully laugh out loud funny, but just like it's very distinct. She also has what I make fun of her. I mean, in a lighthearted way, the way that you tease your spouse, but like you mean it with love. She has a sort of like buffering noise that I don't think she realizes she does. But when I ask her for something, or like she's looking for something and she's like scrolling, she just goes do do do, and it's like she doesn't realize she's doing it, but like it's fully her buffering noise. And I find it cute, but also it's because she's my wife and I love her. So you know, wife guy chat.
Yeah, going from dad chat to husband chat. I was gonna say let's chat about another
man. You could call a dad to a lot of people because he's like the dad who provides. He gave them largesse. He gave them jobs and opportunities to ruin their careers with sexual favors from sex workers. That when you're legally not allowed to do that when you're in the U.S. military. Yes, we're talking about Fat Leonard. And
this has been a long time coming, I think. And I know you and I talked about like really wanting to tackle this, and it's just there's so much to it.
There's so much to Fat Leonard. And I know that there's been a podcast that's talked about it in detail. And I feel like I wasn't really in the position to do the research that it would require to really understand it. But Fat Leonard is such a like perfect slice of life to describe what's going on with the U.S. Navy. In the sense that, you know, while morale is at an all-time low in the Navy and shit is really, really miserable for junior enlisted and for, you know, junior NCOs who have to make this shit, and senior NCOs really have to make this shit work. The senior most NCOs and absolutely the senior officers are just up to no good, cavorting with, if I remember correctly, a guy who was like a Portuguese citizen and a citizen of Macau, who managed to just bribe his way into a lot of positions of financial gain in the U.S. Navy. So we have an article about him because he's gone missing.
First off, I did not know there was actually a Fat Leonard. Like I thought that was just like here we're just gonna call it Fat Leonard because that's just the code name that we've given.
Right.
But no, there's just a fat dude named
Fat
Leonard.
Leonard. Yes. His name is Leonard Francis, and they called him Fat Leonard because he's 350 pounds.
Oh man, he's a husky man. He's there's a lot of this man. Even the picture they have of him, he does not fill the entire. He fills the entire picture, and there's still more to see of him.
So the headline of this article from the San Diego Union Tribune is "Fat Leonard set to finally be sentenced in long-running Navy bribery scheme is on the lam." The military contractor known as Fat Leonard, the mastermind behind the worst public corruption scandal in U.S. Navy history, who was 3 weeks away from being sentenced in the case, is on the run. Leonard Glenn Francis, who has been under house arrest, cut off his GPS monitoring ankle bracelet and absconded from his San Diego home sometime Sunday morning, said Supervisory Deputy U.S. Marshal Omar Castillo. Pre-trial services, the federal agency monitoring Francis, was alerted to an anomaly with Francis's bracelet, and Francis' defense team went to check on him knowing he has a history of health issues. An attorney called San Diego police around 1:45 p.m. saying Francis was not answering their knocks or messages and asked for a welfare check at the home in the Torrey Highlands neighborhood, according to police officials. Officers arrived and entered the home through an unsecured door in a central courtyard and found the home empty, save for the sheared GPS bracelet left behind, according to police and marshals. The U.S. Marshal Service was called to assist, and the San Diego Regional Fugitive Task Force was activated to begin the high-profile manhunt. The Naval Criminal Investigative Service, which spearheaded the massive case against Francis more than a decade ago, is also helping. Neighbors in the gated community told authorities they had seen U-Haul moving trucks going in and out of Francis's home in the days leading up to his escape, Castillo said. It was not known if neighbors knew Francis was the tenant of the sprawling multi-million-dollar home, which, according to real estate websites, has 5 bedrooms and 7 baths. No one reported the moving trucks as suspicious, he said. He was planning this out, that's for sure, Castillo said.
So first off, I understand that this man has been under like indictment, and this goes back like a decade. Why is he in a gated community with a massive house?
Because he has the money to afford it. He probably legally owns it, and until he's convicted, they can't seize it. Or they could maybe with eminent domain, but like they or civil asset forfeiture, but they haven't done that to him yet. Or potentially it's rented. And, you know, he has the money in his defense fund to rent it, like if he doesn't own it. I mean, he's clearly out on bail or on his own recognizance or something like that. Like he has enough money to not be held in pretrial confinement.
I'm looking like I imagine this whole thing, like, you know, a bunch of cops going in and just like, oh, we've got to, you know, our guy, maybe he's dead. Maybe there's problems. 3 weeks before. And then you just see like, an ankle bracelet. See, personally, I would have nailed it to a wall just for, you know, dramatic effect and everything. I hope that once this is eventually made into a Law and Order or an NCIS episode or something like that, they do dress it up a little bit more.
It would be extremely funny if he had just duct taped his ankle bracelet to like a Roomba. So it was like moving around the house.
He cut it off and like tied it around the dog and let the dog out or something. Just like, go be free. Tell them I'm all over the place.
So we'll continue. Law enforcement agencies will be notified to be on the lookout for Francis, nicknamed for his girth, and alerts will be placed at international borders and airports, Castillo said. Investigators will also see if the U-Haul trucks show up on the license plate readers throughout the state or at U.S.-Mexico border crossings. But he may have already crossed south, Castillo acknowledged. The exact requirements of Francis's house arrest beyond the GPS monitoring were not clear Monday. Previous court orders that were unsealed earlier this year showed that U.S. District Judge Janice Sammartino had called for constant security 24 hours a day at Francis's home. The security was provided by an unnamed private company, with Francis footing the bill. The location has been a long-kept secret, even from defense lawyers defending others implicated in the scandal, who had repeatedly asked for more information on his living arrangements. 3 of Francis's children had been living with him, although it was unclear if they were as of Sunday. Francis's defense attorney, Devin Burstein, declined to comment Monday when reached by phone. A spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's Office did not respond to a request for comment. The escape adds to the wild trajectory and unprecedented nature of the case. Francis, a Malaysian national who ran his military contracting firm Glenn Defense Marine Asia from Singapore, was arrested in a San Diego hotel room in 2013 as part of a federal sting. His company serviced visiting Navy ships in ports that he controlled across Southeast Asia, and for years he bribed U.S. Navy officials, many of them in the 7th Fleet, for their influence and access to military intelligence, allowing him to earn millions of dollars from Navy contracts. He pleaded guilty in 2015, admitting to the massive bribery conspiracy and to swindling the Navy out of at least $35 million in overcharges. After several bouts with health issues, including kidney cancer, Francis was released on medical furlough with Sammartino's permission and has been on house arrest since at least 2018. He has been under the supervision of Pretrial Services, a federal agency that monitors defendants who are out of custody until sentencing. Both behind bars and later on while on home confinement, Francis worked as a cooperating witness for federal prosecutors who continued to build cases against several others involved in the scheme, including high-ranking naval officers. His sentencing date has been put off for years as he assisted prosecutors and prepared for what was expected to be his star turn on the witness stand in the trial earlier this year against 5 former naval officers. But for reasons unknown, Francis was never called to testify. 4 of the officers were convicted, and the jury deadlocked on charges against the 5th. 29 others, Navy officials, defense contractors, Francis and his corporation, have pleaded guilty. With Francis's usefulness to prosecutors seemingly at its end, a sentencing date was set for September 22nd. Obviously, it's very disappointing, San Diego attorney Michael Crowley, who defended one of the former Navy officers in the recent trial, said upon hearing of Francis's escape. He started all this, and we wanted him to testify since he was the crux of the government's case. Here, they've let him slip right through their fingers. Francis's unique living arrangements have come under scrutiny previously. On December 17th, 2020, San Martino called a hearing after receiving a report that there was no security on site for nearly 3 hours. A pretrial services officer making a routine check had showed up at the location at 11 a.m. only to find no guard present. She did not receive word a guard was on site until 1:45 p.m., according to a court transcript of the hearing that was sealed for years before becoming public in January. The guard said he had gone on lunch break during that time. Francis participated in the hearing by phone and was apologetic.
Whomst among us, you know? Sometimes you pop off for a half-hour lunch break and it turns into 3.
I'm so sorry for what's happened, and I just want you to know this will never happen again, he told the judge, according to the transcript. I've always been clear with my pretrial arrangement. I've always been here, and I just want to apologize. I'm so sorry, ma'am. Okay, San Martino replied. No, I appreciate that, Mr. Leonard Francis. I don't think there's anything untoward about what was being plotted here or anything. In the hearing, the judge ordered that a third guard be hired. Previously, 2 guards worked 12-hour shifts, according to the transcript. This was a very significant issue, she said, and there's a lot of interest in this matter. And I've assured people in the other case that's pending, this is a legitimate medical furlough that's been granted here, and that all the appropriate steps have been taken. And when I saw this, I realized they're not being taken if they were at some point in time, they become lax for whatever reason. The transcript is one of 14 hearings held from February 2018 through December 2021 on Francis's health and living arrangements. All the hearings were held behind closed courtroom doors, and transcripts were sealed until January 20th. The court file gives no specific reason why the 375 pages of the hearing transcript were released, but it came a couple of months after the release of a podcast Francis recorded at the location about the scandal, apparently without San Martino's or the government's knowledge. Fat Leonard himself
COVID brain fog.
Was on... No, pause for a second. Pause for a fucking second. Hang on. Okay. Apparently, Fat Leonard himself went on the Fat Leonard podcast and bragged about how much fucking money he made. No.
See, Nate, we gotta be better about this. See, this has been going on since 2013. We could have gotten Fat Leonard on our show. I feel like this dude wants to brag about money. I feel like we could have gotten.
Oh my God. All right. In another hearing that was previously under seal, San Martino seemed surprised to find out that Francis's mother and his children, who had lived overseas, were with him in the U.S. In the podcast that aired last fall, Francis confirmed that 3 of his children were living with him and attending school. At the October 14, 2018 hearing, his defense attorney asked for the conditions of Francis's home release to allow, quote, other activities pre-approved by probation, unquote. Standard conditions allow people on a home release to leave the residence for work, education, religious services, or medical needs. A probation officer explained that the new language proposed by the defense lawyer would allow Francis to attend church more often and perhaps even go to a grocery store once in a while. Also, the probation officer said, quote, his kids are in the U.S. and he wants to take them to school, unquote, according to the transcript. I didn't know his family was here, San Martino responded. The judge. His family is here now? Yes, Burstein replied. And they'll get to see him? San Martino asked. They get to see him, Burstein replied. He explained that Francis' mother, quote, brought the kids to visit, unquote, at some point and apparently stayed. Apparently the mother and children live on the same property. Burstein explained that, quote, the kids are here with mom, not in the same residence. They're in the main residence, unquote. In the end, the judge declined to alter the order. Quote, I'm a little concerned about making it home detention kind of in name only, she said. We're taking the kids to school, going to kids' visits. I need to think this through, Mr. Burstein. Her final decision on the matter is unknown. And that's the end of the story.
For like their star witness in a massive Navy scandal. And like this is the biggest modern scandal in the Navy that involves prostitutes and drugs. I don't want to say the biggest scandal currently because the Navy is constantly fucking up everything, whether they're running boats into other boats or whatever. But you would think that like, oh, here's our guy who is we need him to indict these like 35 other officers that were taking bribes and, got money grifted from and were, doing cocaine and having prostitutes. You'd think that somebody would be like, yeah, by the way, his parents are living, his kids are there, or we have plenty of guards to keep an eye, or just like a security camera that somebody's watching something.
I seem to recall that he's a Malaysian national, but I seem to recall that he had other citizenships or other passports. He wouldn't have had a Singaporean passport because you have to give up all your other citizenships to become a Singaporean citizen. But the fact that like he has money and he has ties to other countries and citizenship of other countries, like you would think they'd be like, I wonder if this guy's a flight risk. But it's once again, it's like, it blows my mind because you think of it. Francis, have we ever talked about the Khalif Browder story on this podcast?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so Khalif Browder was a black teenager from Brooklyn who was arrested for being accused of stealing a backpack from like a corner shop. Like in New York City, like this isn't bodega chat, but like you'll have a lot of 99-cent stores or like discount stores, like just on the street. So like on my block, just on the corner where I lived at, there was a bodega and like a laundromat, and then in between them was a 99-cent store that was run by like a Chinese family. It was like the husband and wife and like their kids ran this store. He was accused of stealing a backpack, and he was arrested for it. He was 16. His family didn't have money to make bail, and every time they were supposed to have like an arraignment, like the prosecution wasn't ready, so it kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, and he was just in Rikers Island jail the whole time waiting. And like it started to have an effect on his mental health. They started punishing him for outbursts by putting him in solitary confinement, and he wound up being in jail without being charged for like 2.5 years. And then finally, I think because of the outcry, they finally dropped the charges and released him. And he had become kind of like a what you call like a co-celeb, like a big sort of thing people talked about. And he'd gotten money, people had donated money to help him and stuff like that. But like he really wasn't doing well after having been in fucking Rikers for 2.5 years for no reason. Because I believe it was just like his word against the guys, but like there wasn't any evidence. They just arrested him and threw him away. When he was 20, so not long after he'd been released from jail, he hanged himself. And like, it's so fucked up. It's such a fucked up story. And it all comes down to his life wasn't considered worthy enough for any kind of protection whatsoever, or even like basic sort of right to speedy trial, right to due process over an allegation he had stolen like a fucking $10 backpack. But this dude has been able to help prosecutors put lots of people away by ratting out the dudes who did corruption with him, is living in a mansion in San Diego and is allowed to become such a flight risk that he has now flown. And it just makes you think like, America. Sounds about right.
Yeah, it's very jarring as a youth to be taught about the justice system and justice, and it's gonna it comes for everybody eventually, and it's fair and it treats people equally, and then you become an adult and you find out that's not how it is whatsoever. It's something that I try to kind of drill into my child too. It's just like, look, don't.
I had a younger friend when I was in high school. He was a freshman and I was a senior, and we swam together and we were pretty close friends for a while. We still talk every now and again. He's like extremely accomplished, like professional photographer now. Like super accomplished. Like if you know anything about photography, he's repped by Magnum, which like is such a big goddamn deal if you're a photographer. So like he's really, really, like ascended in that world. And it was really funny because like maybe a week after he turned 18, he got hemmed up because he and some friends were, they jumped the fence to like a neighborhood pool and were drinking and playing music. And people were like smoking joints. There was nothing worse than some alcohol, some like shitty beer and some joints. And they saw cop cars, so they fucking jumped the fence again and ran, and they hid in someone's garage. But one of the girls they were hiding with suddenly developed a conscience and was like, no, we have to turn ourselves in, because the cops couldn't find them. So what happened, he was the only person of legal age. He was over 18, everyone else was under 18, but like they were all classmates from school. He just happened to have just turned 18. So he got hit with furnishing alcohol to a minor, possession of alcohol underage, possession of marijuana, and like all of the counts that they would have charged their kids with, they stuck on him. So like, imagine getting charged with like 9 separate counts of possession of both alcohol and weed, and then also furnishing alcohol to a minor. So he was looking at 3 to 5 years in a felony at age 18, and like 18 in like 2 weeks. So his parents had enough money for him to get a defense attorney, and he went through and they negotiated a thing where he pled to misdemeanors. They dropped the felony charges, and he spent his whole first year of college having to get drug tested every month and having to go to AA and NA meetings while in school. So he like couldn't go to any parties. He basically couldn't take any risks with drinking, because they told him if you, even though he was going to college in a different state, if you get arrested, then we will hit you with those charges that are being, presently, like you're in a discharge program, but those charges will all come back. You'll have violated your probation.
Right. Sort of Damocles kind of hanging 100%. Over you. And
I'm pretty sure he wound up, being on probation for a while. He didn't get violated, and he got over, eventually. But even at 18, I remember hanging out with him afterwards, like smoking cigarettes, because that was the one legal thing we could do. And him just being like, this is just fucking bullshit. If I didn't have money, I would get felonies. I'd be in prison for at least a year, maybe 2 years. I'd have a felony on my record. I'd be fucked for the rest of my life. He's like, but my parents have enough money to get an attorney, so like I can make this go away and I can eventually. He's like, it's fucking pay to play. It's complete horseshit. And I just recall like I agreed with him at the time, but like I don't think at 18 I would have had that like sort of observation of it. But that's also because like I grew up pretty privileged, like in a suburb, you know, like I wasn't like fucking rich, but like I grew up in a place where basically the idea of the cops just being bored and deciding to pin some fake bullshit on you, it is possible, but it's pretty rare. Most of the time, it would like when people I knew got in trouble, it was like the cops came up with a bullshit reason to pull them over and then found weed or alcohol. You know what I mean? Like, because the cops were bored. The way the cops were bored in Carmel, Indiana was like, oh, you're not driving. We determined the direction of your wheels was 1 inch to the left of the center of the lane, thus you were driving impaired, thus we're pulling you over because it's 11:01 p.m. You know what I mean? Like that kind of shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the cops around here too. Like when I was growing up, it's, you know, as long as you are respectful and say yes sir, no sir. And what it really was is that you're a middle-class white kid.
You know what's really funny is I was thinking about this. I remember when I was 13, my brother, my friend from home, from New Mexico, and me were at this music shop. And my brother at the time had a Ford Ranger, an 88 Ford Ranger. Many of you may recall these things. They look kind of like shit, you know? And this one was this would have been about 98. So about 10-year-old truck, pretty beat up looking, not very fancy at all. And we just looked like shitheads, you know, band t-shirts and jeans or shorts or something and like skateboard shoes. We just looked like garden variety. But cops came up and were like, what are you doing? And we were like, we're going to the music store. And the cop was like, put your hands in the truck. And I was like, no, we're just going. He's like, put your fucking hands in the truck. Don't move your hands. And he's like, what are you doing? And we're like, well, we are here to try out a guitar and maybe buy one. He's like, where do you live? And we're like, in Carmel. He's like, all right, stay out of trouble. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck? And I realized now what it was, because the truck we were driving made us look like we might be poor. And that's it.
It might be stealing something.
Because we weren't driving like a fucking nice SUV or something, because we didn't look obviously like Carmel kids. And that part of town was near an area where the city of Carmel had annexed a township that had been unincorporated, where there were a lot of like working class people. If you're familiar with Indianapolis and Carmel, it's a place called Home Place. I want to say it's like 96th Street to 116th Street, like way on the west side. But where we were at in town was relatively close to there. And I always wondered, I'm like, man, Carmel cops were such fucking dickheads. Why was that guy fucking with us? But now I realize, like, oh yeah, because we looked like we might not have money. But that was like the most, you know, it was hostility. We weren't getting arrested and sent to jail for 2.5 years. You know what I mean?
It's a lot of times it's just a cop trying to flex.
Yeah. And that was like, even as a young teenager, I remember thinking like every time I've ever seen a cop get involved with something, they've made it worse. Like before I even, you know, I loved Rage Against the Machine, but I wasn't really on the fuck the police energy yet. But like, I just, as my sort of like cops, they seemed like they would just go from zero to screaming their fucking throats out at you for nothing. And you're sort of like, wow, every situation with cops is more tense because these cops look like they're like, they think you're their wife and they want to beat you. Like, it's insane. And like, I was like 14 and I was clocking that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the, like when you're driving and you see a cop behind you, not even with the lights on, and you just get that like tightness in your chest, like, oh fuck, like I better make sure that I'm doing everything correct. I can't roll a stop sign at, 2 miles an hour. I can't, I'm going to drive the exact,
come to an absolute, well, that fucking dickhead look the cops have when they're waiting for you to not come to a complete stop at a four-way so they can pull you over. And you're just like, stop, you're like, literally my car is a statue. I will wait for you to go, officer. You have the right of way. Like, because they're waiting for you to fuck up.
I immediately drop like three miles an hour below the speed limit, so they go around me. Like the only way that you can like really fuck with a cop in those kind of situations is to adhere to the law so much that they are annoyed by you. That's
exactly how I got out of the fucking situation. I think I talked about this on Midwestology, but like about me and my friends smoking weed, and then our friend had to make us leave his house because a girl was coming over and he thought he was going to get laid. And so he threw us out, like we had smoked weed like maybe 20 minutes prior, and we're all blazed out of our minds. And we had to drive to go to this friend's pool party, but it was all the way across town. And almost immediately upon us leaving my friend's like neighborhood, there was a cop behind us, and he followed us for like 3 miles heading south. And so I was just panicking the whole time, just like going the speed limit. And this cop was just tailgating the dog shit out of me the whole way. And just like losing my mind. And then finally I turned right to head west. And he kept going south. And once we were clear of him, we all started cheering, and we put on Filter's Take a Picture and just sang along.
There's no more Midwest of an experience.
I swear to God, we were practically crying. We were all singing along with it. Oh, my fucking God, I hated cops. I mean, like, I still don't like cops, man. I don't know, like, I just, we've got...
Here's the thing. The last cop that was helpful to me, I got mugged like 12 years ago, and one of the cops I knew because he used to be in my Army unit. He was an undercover St. Louis police officer, and they didn't really get anything back. They did get the guy who robbed me at gunpoint. The only things that I got back were like my keys and my wallet, but that's because the guy dumped them in a trash can like while he was running because he just took the cash and my phone. And one of the neighbors is like, yeah, we saw him dump some stuff in there. So I got my keys, I got my my wallet and everything back. No cash, no phone, which was fine. But 10 years later, I always knew that guy was kind of a dick, like because I knew him in the Army. But he is I don't know if he has been charged yet, but he got arrested for molesting a 12-year-old.
So Christ.
The one cop that was slightly useful to me turns out he's a child molester. So fuck that guy.
I just think about this. The best situations I've ever had with cops was when cops were like neutral, when they did their job. Like it wasn't, I was like, oh, what a great guy. I love officers. They were literally doing the thing they were supposed to do. And that's my best cop experiences. It's just like cop was like gave helpful information or like, told me what I should or should not do in a situation. And that's it.
Yeah, my brother is an LEO for the federal government at the Arch Grounds, and he's incredibly helpful because he gives tourist directions. And
yeah, I mean, what I was gonna say is I was thinking about like that mentality, like the immediately quick jump to anger to lose your mind. I remember there was a soldier that was like this. He was like a E5 in my unit and was like a hardcore, just like Joe Hazer, like fucking was just like the meanest, the shittiest NCO to these young privates. It was just smoke the dog shit. It was just like working out so much anger and rage at them. Then he got out of the Army and like someone shared a headline in one of our fucking private groups of like his face in a mugshot, and it's like man arrested for striking wife with car. And it's just like, yep, there's a type. There's a fucking type. We've really gotten off topic, but it's fine because like I think the thing with Fat Leonard, the biggest takeaway is just it's amazing how much of this was out in the open before someone figured out it was time to do something about it. And that to me is genuinely...
There's a threshold. I believe. There's like an amount that you can steal from the government. There's an amount of cocaine and prostitutes that you can get away with. There's an amount... And, he just overdid it. He overdid it, and all these captains overdid it. Because what happened, probably he's just like, hey, let me get like 2 or 3 of these guys under my wing. And then... And these Navy captains, so they're 06s. They're colonels of the Navy, for those of you who need the translation. So these are higher ranking officers, not quite admirals, not yet. That's the next rank. But I'm sure that those guys are like, hey, we got this cool guy over here in Singapore, who, when we land 7th Fleet out there, he's going to hook you up with some cocaine and prostitutes. And that shit just kind of gets passed around until everybody is being compromised by it. And, like I said, there's a certain amount of graft and griff you can get away with until somebody's just like, all right, you're really kind of fucking with what we're trying to do here, like on the surface of things. And he got hit with that, but of course, because he's a rich guy and because he's got a bunch of friends, higher up and everything like that, he gets these privileges. I don't know if you remember the old Chappelle Show sketch where they have like a crack dealer who goes through the same things that like a white collar crime guy would go through, and then the white collar crime guy has to go through the crack dealer's like form of the system, where he's just the business guy has the public defender who has like no time, and the crack dealer's just yelling, I plead the fifth. And that's still that is obviously still a true kind of thing here, where it is so expensive to be an American. Like healthcare, like my daughter's prescription for Vyvanse. Like, it's $40 with our insurance. If we didn't have insurance, it's over $400. And it's like, this is like a little pill that she needs to function, like for her brain to be able to work. And I know so many people who use Vyvanse and they're like, I need this. It's the only way that my brain works.
I remember somebody who told me
like,
that they had a prescription for Vyvanse when they were on health insurance, but they lost their job and didn't have insurance anymore, and they had to go on Medicaid. And New York Medicaid is pretty good compared to other states, but New York Medicaid, like, you have to really go through the system numerous times and get referrals and be able to beat down the door until they finally agree to prescribe you Vyvanse, because they will instead, for ADHD, they'll prescribe you Ritalin. And this guy didn't do well on Ritalin, but Vyvanse worked. And he was just like basically off his meds for months, trying to get a doctor who would just be sympathetic, be like, I've had it before. I've had both medications before. One works, one doesn't. Could you please just listen to what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. And it's so aggravating. Like the real, like, I don't care about, 06s doing blow and getting prostitutes.
I do in the sense that it drives me nuts. Sex trafficking, and also I would say what bothers me is the fact that, like, if they're Joes or if they're junior enlisted got caught doing the same thing, they would go in hard on Navy values for why they should send this person to prison for as long as possible. Like, why they should be able to, like, spectacularly publicly punish them and things like that. Whereas, look, I mean, if cocaine wasn't fucking awesome, these guys wouldn't want to be doing it. These senior officers wouldn't want to be doing it, and, like, obviously every dude in the Navy is horny all the time.
Yeah. I mean, sex work is work and cocaine is fun, so I'm told. So I understand, the desire to do these things, but it is.
I'm not in a position to mess with the health complications that comes with heavy duty stimulants. But, like, yeah, I think coke should be decriminalized. I think it should be legal. It's bad, but so is alcohol. Like, it's you do much more harm mitigation by having it be legal than having it be illegal. A lot of the problems people are having, for example, in the US is when it's adulterated and stuff like that. Like, obviously the fact that it's so expensive, or it was at one point so expensive, causes huge social problems too. Like, we could talk forever, but I think the biggest thing about Fat Leonard to me is that what I hate, because I'm a fucking nerd, in my heart, I've never developed out of this fucking 6-year-old brain kind of conception of the world. The double standards, the unfairness of it, that drives me nuts. And, like, that's a very white thing to say, I get it. But, like, to me, the big scandal with Fat Leonard is how long it went on, how obvious it was, how many problems, like, people could have prevented if they had just been allowed to act on it, if it wasn't just sort of friends in high places bullshit, the way that the U.S. Navy works. But also the fact that, like, at any one of these junctures, the kind of things that were being done, you could very easily, like, if it was a supply sergeant in the Army fucking hooking people up and taking money from the government, they'd send them to jail. If it was people getting caught, patronizing sex workers, they go to jail. Because even though it might be legal in the jurisdiction you're in, if you're in the military, it's illegal. So if they can prove that you visited a sex worker, or just prove well enough to fucking get you hemmed up in the military justice system, you will be punished for it. And then obviously drugs, like if officers do drugs, it's like, a little bird told me we're doing a drug test, so you need to not show up to work tomorrow. Versus if a Joe is doing drugs, it's like, send his ass to fucking the stockade. You know what I mean? That shit drives me crazy. And that's I think the big story of this is like Fat Leonard is a degree of rank having privileges. It, like, got so bad that even the normal rank has privileges ass people in the other branches of service couldn't look away from it.
Once again, we need, I'd say, an E4 and below union to really protect against these things.
I sometimes worry that a military union would become like a police union, like a means of protecting people from wrongdoing. So like,
or they're going to go on strike because the DFAC sucks.
That's a valid reason to go on strike, though. If Joe refuses to fucking do PMCS or sweep the motor pool until they unfuck the DFAC, or, like, got rid of the black mold in the barracks, that would be good. But if Joe goes on strike because it's like, this guy was unfairly punished for, like, crashing his car into the airport while fucking, high on 2 packets of Mucinex after shooting his wife, but he shouldn't get UCMJ for it, like, that's bad. You know what I mean? We had a soldier crash his car into the airport. That's why I came up with that example. The
problem with an E4 union is that E4s are going to do E4 shit, and they're going to protect each other. Like, no, you can't give me an Article 15 for doing donuts in the gator outside of the motor pool and then flipping it and breaking my leg.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
not fair.
We're going on strike because that shouldn't be a line of duty investigation. His duty description was to do PMCS on that gator, and that's the way that you test the gator's suspension, is to whip shitties in the parking lot with it. Francis, We don't have a bonus yet out this month, but we will have 3 out this month. And I will just do a separate promo on the feed for it. We've got some good content coming up though. And Francis, you're going to be interviewing our friend Davis Winke shortly. Could you maybe give a preview of episodes to come?
Yeah. So there are some new things that the military, the army is trying to do to like get people in shape for the military. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing that they're doing, you know, like if it was 20 years ago when I was in, we would have called it fat camp, because that's, you know, it was where the overweight soldiers went to lose a little bit of weight, be on better diet programs.
We used to call it big boy PT, and that's probably worse.
Yeah. So that and also I just like bringing Davis on because he writes for the Army Times, and I like to keep up with what the Army is trying to do. So that should be our episode next week, probably our main one, because I'm going to be once again kind of out. My wife's going to be out of town, so I'm going to be a single dad for a while, and it's hard to podcast.
Prayers up for Francis. Prayers up because he's going to be being a single dad. So you know what? We will keep you in our thoughts, in our hearts. But for those of you listening, just FYI, we have a Patreon, and it's $5 a month with bonus episodes going all the way back to the beginning of 2017. There's a link to that in the show notes. And even if you can't subscribe, thank you so much for being a listener. We greatly appreciate your support. We greatly appreciate your dedication to the show over the years. And thank you so much again for making time to listen to us. And Francis, I will speak to you next week.
Take care.